Back, everybody, to the High Conflict Co-Parenting Podcast with Brook Olsen. This week, my guest is Sol Kennedy from the Best Interest app. The Best Interest app is a AI-generated co-parenting communication app. And yeah, welcome, Sol.
Thank you, Brooke. It's so good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
So tell us a little bit about what drove you to create this platform, and then we'll just kind of dive into the subject a little bit more.
Well, as a lot of things go, it came from personal experience, a deep, personal, challenging experience of being in a high conflict relationship. And Best Interest was born from just taking you back. Brooke, if you had told me that 6 years ago, if you told me 6 years ago that I would have created something that would have had such a profound impact in the lives of people that were going through the same thing that I did, I wouldn't have believed you. And 6 years ago, I received this very familiar ding in our family wizard at 10 o'clock at night, and I knew it was just another message that was going to be triggering, going to keep me up. And I knew that this was not something that I could keep on doing. And so from that day forward, I decided I wanted to do something about it. Now, back in 2020, AI didn't exist. And so I actually hired a support person to help me out with my co-parenting relationship. I thought, well, maybe he's not going to get triggered in the same way that I get triggered. And that worked. It was nice having someone to process the messages for me and help me feel a little bit better. But it wasn't really a business, or it wasn't something that I could scale out to help other people. And fast forward to 3 years ago, I was playing around with AI with my kids, and we were working on some children's stories together for bedtime. And after I put them to bed, I started playing around with the AI tool and the co-parenting messages that I was receiving, that I was sending. And it was really surprisingly helpful to get that third-party insight. And so I decided in that moment that this could be a tool that I could create for people, particularly around communication, helping gain perspective and helping shield co-parents from what can be really toxic communication coming in from their ex. And that was the spark that birthed Best Interest.
Yeah, I think for so many of us, the history of being in this sparks us to get creative. I know that that's what brought me into here over 25 years ago. And things have evolved, and AI has really picked up in so many arenas. I use it all of the time. This notion that you came to of having somebody help you with your messaging is not a new concept. I've got a colleague that's been doing that for years for people, and it helps to really help people step back, down, regulate, not get triggered by so much of the stuff that goes and filters through. And I know that a lot of the platforms out there now, our Family Wizard, Talking Parents, have got an AI component to them as well in terms of the communication. Tell me a little bit about what sets you apart from those platforms.
Yeah, great question. So I think it starts with a philosophical difference. So when these platforms got started, our Family Wizard's been out for 25 years or so. And their intention has always been a good one, which is we're going to help you track and organize your communication in one place so it's easy to print out and take it to court if you ever need it. And that's helpful. But I knew that from the beginning, I wanted to put the power back in the user of the app to set boundaries about the type of communication they're willing to receive. So every message that you receive as a Best Interest user passes through an AI filter. And so that allows you to shield yourself from the communication that's coming at you. And I think that philosophical difference creates an entirely different experience for our users. So we're also shielding you from yourself, right? We can always we can all get into that defensive posture or even attacking back, and that's not going to look good in court. So we proactively review every message that you send, and we give you feedback prior to sending it. You don't have to notice a little tone meter icon on the side or anything like that. We actually are proactively getting involved, giving you feedback, and then allowing you to take action with that feedback.
So it's just not a one-way pass through where they are telling you that what you're about to send is not really an appropriate piece. You might want to go back and change it or give you some suggestions for it. It's actually filtering it through on incomings,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
allows um, somebody to downregulate their nervous system and not get triggered on an ongoing basis. And I was also, doing a little bit of reading about your platform as well. And there is a place here that you're able to actually archive the original message as well, should you need to have that.
Of course. Yeah, we just like our Family Wizard or any of the other apps, every interaction that you have, every message you send, every message that you receive, that's all tracked. So if you ever do need to print out a record of what's gone on, you can. My goal with the app for our users is to create an environment where they don't need to go to court. That they are able to downregulate themselves, they are able to reduce the conflict on their own without having to go and get, daddy court to go and enforce a rule.
So I've been dancing in this arena for 25 years. I was there about at the inception of our Family Wizard, which was, I think, the legacy platform here. And you and I talked about this when we had our initial conversation, that there is a segment of this population, of the high conflict population, that doesn't have the ability to regulate. They don't have the capacity or the brain function to be able to regulate. And getting them into one of these platforms, they know that there is an exposure that's going to happen for them, and they're very resistant to it. Um, and one of the things that I've done in the past, and I don't know whether this is a promotion that you guys use or not, but I've told parents to pick one of these, whichever one you want, because it is an email platform, right? And simply say, this is how I'm going to communicate. This is my email. If you want to communicate with me, you will use this, and setting that boundary as a upfront. It's I'll pay for it. You don't have to do anything here. This is my platform. Um, do you see that as a functional piece for your platform? If somebody comes in and pays that piece up front for the other side, and they simply say, this is what I'm doing, do you see that as a workable piece?
Yeah, well, you bring up a really good point and a differentiator. So, first of all, we actually are a text-based platform. And the reason why we've gone that direction is that I believe that the text-based communication is actually more succinct and more subject-based. We really want our messages to be topical and to not get lengthy. Um, the primary differentiator that Best Interest offers to co-parents in high conflict is that you don't need to get your co-parent to agree to use it. You can download the Best Interest app, and we can assign you a brand new phone number that you can give to your ex. And so if you're in a situation where your ex doesn't agree to anything, let alone using some platform that might help reduce the conflict or filter their messages, then you can use it and you can just assign them a new number, and they will give you they will send you SMSs, and that will flow through the app. And when you send a response after it's been processed, then it will go out through SMS. So they don't even need to know that you're using it. And that's actually been a very popular feature that we've employed. I believe we're the only co-parenting app that has that feature,
I think that's
and
brilliant.
it helps people to experience peace from day one rather than having to go through the effort of either getting a court order or getting the co-parent to agree. Additionally, if you are in a situation where you can get your co-parent to agree, like you said, especially if you're paying, we have a unique feature in that both co-parents don't need to be subscribers. So you can have your co-parent join the app and they can use the app for all communication with you, but they don't have to pay. They can stay in the free mode. And then you can subscribe if you wish, if you want to have support for AI messaging. And that's just a monthly fee. So you're paying $15 a month. You're getting your messages processed and you're receiving the peace and the benefits of that. And the other side doesn't have to pay if they don't really believe in those features.
And that includes the phone number.
Correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's brilliant.
Thank you.
It really sets that resistance level from somebody to the side because they're communicating freely, as if you're tracking this stuff you want them to do, because that is an exposure on their end. And for you, for the user, the subscriber, if you will, they get filtered messages in. They don't get triggered. Their kids don't have to look at a triggered parent in real time. That ding doesn't go off, and you're not going, ah, in that moment that you want to strangle somebody.
Yeah.
Um, so let's talk about AI for a moment, because you
Yeah.
and I had a conversation that went down a couple of rabbit holes here, and I think it's worth having this conversation because although this mitigates a lot of what's going on, it doesn't fix the problem. And the incoming ongoing process of dealing with a high conflict parent doesn't mean that you're not going back to court. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have to deal with a lot of the pieces that are there. And although this takes care of part of the communication component of it, I think, again, I use AI quite a bit these days as an organizational tool. I use it as a concept tool, but it doesn't, there's not a cognitive component to it where somebody can really step in and start to strategically look at how to change their process with their parenting, their process with dealing with exchanges, with dealing with um, extracurricular pieces, dealing with school pieces. And my concern as people start to lean into this tool, this very robust tool, that they forget that they have something else that they need to be doing in this process. They've got a responsibility to upgrade their own um, internal filters and not abdicate their growth, their evolution in this to AI.
Absolutely. Yeah. Having gone through the experience myself, I resonate with a lot of what you said, and that divorce, especially if you say yes to it, can be an incredibly growth filled personal opportunity. I am so much stronger than I was because I've gone through a divorce. Um, I don't believe that AI is doing anything to it's not like we're burying our heads in the sand, but we are experiencing a little bit of space. And I think that that space is really important, both for allowing us to stay present with our kids, but also to just have that healing space. So we're not constantly being triggered. Um, I've heard so many co-parents where they receive 10, 20, 30 messages a day. And in that sort of environment, you're not necessarily experiencing growth. You're just being re-traumatized. And so by creating that space and backing up, when I first got started with this, I had been watching and listening to a lot of Dr. Ramani's videos. She was one of the voices that I really turned to understand what I was going through. And when I was envisioning best interest, I thought, well, who would I like to have on the team to help me understand and be trauma informed about the build out of this app? And so I cold emailed her and she said, oh, that's a great idea. And we had a great call. And she was very instrumental and is continuing to be involved with building out the best interest app. And the reason I mention that is that one of the features that she proposed in the beginning, where AI can help in a new way, is that she was describing this experience of having a co-parent sitting across from her saying, look at this email I got last week. I was so upset. But in that moment, that person, that co-parent, isn't feeling upset necessarily. It's kind of this abstract thing. So she missed the opportunity to help them in the moment. And Best Interest has the capability. We have a feature where you don't have to see the original message, right? You see the filtered message. You can respond to it. You can be a good co-parent by, being responsible around times and whatnot. But you don't have to see all the rest of that junk until later when you're in a place where you can do the processing. So for the first time, you can take in that original copy, you can send it to your therapist, and in session, she or he can read it out to you, and you can experience those feelings come up with the support of your therapist for the first time in real time. Because these messages, I believe, especially when we're dealing with, narcissism or that sort of thing, they can be so rich in what they're showing about ourselves and what we need to heal.
Yeah, I think that that's an incredibly important piece of this because, to your point, personal evolution in terms of relationships is it's not quite linear,
Mm-hmm.
but it's certainly got a pathway to how do I understand how I got here and how I react to a particular stimulus. And the growth here on some level comes through that stimulus of being able to process it. And the high conflict piece, we see so often in here that there is a codependent aspect to it. There's that hook of I'm holding on to this because I of attachment stuff, and I guess that when somebody doesn't have, and it doesn't have to be in real time, but when somebody doesn't have that stimulation, they get lazy and go, okay, I can just go through this. Well, this is still going on the other side. The other side isn't processing, and even though they can't process it, but we're not able to experience that the kids are still in the middle of this to some degree, and that there's an aspect far beyond just the communication that we have to do to shield, to put boundary, so those children aren't in the battlefield. And again, my concern, and this is probably something that your app can't fix, but I think I need, or I want our listeners to hear is that they've still got to be able to have a notion of the rattling that's going on over here that's keeping the kids hooked in it, so they can start to do things from their parenting style, holding that parallel parenting style here and understanding what that means in protecting the kids in the process.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I'm a personal advocate of parallel parenting in high conflict situations. I I believe that best interest can serve as a good ally in that you are shielding yourself. You're the one that's in control of what you want to receive or not. And that allows you to disconnect. But AI, or really any tool, is not a replacement for therapy, for doing the healing work. It's just another tool that you can put in your toolkit that might help you in this process, maybe even accelerate the process. It's one way forward.
As you were developing this and refining it, because I know that you're still refining it, what were the challenges? What were the gaps in what you were trying to accomplish? How did they show up? And can you talk a little bit about what those might have been?
Yeah, it's a constant process of refinement and user feedback. In fact, the way that our system works today is that it's learning from each individual user. So when you receive a message that's been filtered from the Best Interest app, um, you might get a response. You might feel triggered by our filter, right? Maybe it said something that you don't agree with, or maybe even sometimes AI does hallucinate. And so in those situations, you can downvote that message and give us feedback. And that feedback is incorporated in real time about things that we know about you. So if we misinterpret a name and it's, maybe your dog instead of your kid or something like that, then you can let us know and we'll remember it. So it's constant learning, growing. And as a team that are approaching this issue, we're always looking for and growing from our users' feedback. I would say specifically some of the things that we've improved has been that individual learning piece. We trained on the original set of beta users that agreed to let us train the algorithms based on their interactions, and that was helpful. But every co-parenting situation is unique, and so we knew from early feedback that we needed to develop a tool that was growing and learning on a more individual relationship basis rather than on a global basis.
So I'm a coach, and I help people on all aspects of their divorce. I help them understand what's important to them in terms of really getting into not the depth of the financial, but the concept of the financial components. Where are your pain points? What's important to you? And how do we separate these out so you can start your path down to reinventing yourself down the road? Strategy for approaching custody issues, strategies for dealing with logistics in their co-parenting situations. And it's important for me to be able to help them disseminate some of the communications that are important. And my one of my concerns and my questions is this stuff that's coming from the other parent that is unfiltered is important information. It's important processing information. I'm not a therapist. I'm not trying to help them therapeutically, but I'm trying to help them cognitively separate pieces and put the strategies together in whatever level that is, whether they're going to court, they're going to mediation, whatever that arena is going to be. And that it's critical information in that relationship. So how do I get the information to be able to utilize it to help my client in their process?
Yeah, that's a great question. And just to underline here, we don't advocate for any of our users to fly blind in this scenario. So you really should be looking at the original message when you feel resourced. It's there and it is communication. And like you said, it's very helpful. Um, it's just about you getting to dictate when you see it. So if you were just going based on the AI's filtering of the messages, you probably would miss important stuff. Definitely on the healing aspect, but maybe even factual. So it's important to review it later or even at the time if you're feeling super resourced when you receive the message. Um, how you as a coach can benefit is the same way that I talked about with Dr. Ramani, is that your clients can send you messages that they receive, the original message, directly to you. And then you can read it, come up with a game plan, and then talk with them about it. So you're able to join them in the app and see those original messages, and help it facilitate healing.
So, in some of the other platforms, parenting coordinators, um, evaluators um, have access to the platform,
Yes.
and they're able to see what's really going on so they can be aware of the personalities that are taking place, who's stonewalling, who's being obnoxious, who's creating the conflict in this, and who's not. And that helps give them some data to help intervene in the process, and or for some of them make decisions as to outcomes. um, does your app have that ability?
That feature is coming. Right now, what we do is we allow our users to send individual reports or messages directly to whomever they wish, which of their professionals they want to include in. The login portal for professionals, it's on our list and it's coming this year.
It's an important piece again.
Definitely. Yeah.
Getting the data, again, even as a coach, being able to look inside and go, okay, this is what they're doing. How do we strategically either counter that or go around that, drop the rope with it? What's important here? Because the process for the client, of my client, is very much one of, if they're going to heal from this, if they are going to grow from this, is there's got to be a place where they learn how to contain this internally and not external.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you bringing up the importance of this feature, and also I'll say, when the time comes, I would love to invite you to that platform to get your feedback early on before it goes live. I think that that would be really useful information. Whenever we approach a new feature, um, our our company is modeled after looking at what we can do in a new way because of the new tools that are available to us. AI is such an amazing tool, and it can be employed to change the way that some of these types of features are built. So for that professional portal, obviously, I'm thinking about how do we allow you, Brooke, deeper access and information into what's going on? How can we make your job easier? So instead of you having to go through the 50, 100 messages to kind of scan through and figure out what might be going on, maybe we can bubble up some of that. Maybe we can do some auto tagging so you can search for the times where they only talked about school, right? Those sorts of things we can do in a much smarter way because we're employing AI from the very beginning.
I think that type of an approach, and AI's ability to do some of that dissemination out front can be really important. So I'd be interested and excited to see that start to happen, because what AI does well is efficiency. It helps get through the top level stuff. And when I'm working on a concept, when I'm trying to bring an idea forward, for a blog, for a podcast, for a course, whatever it is, I can put a chat in, and it gives a good overview, and then I can start to sort through and start to build from there. And it's not about being lazy, it's about being efficient. It's about taking out a concept and being able to spread it out on the table quicker and being able to do the infill. And again, as people start to engage with platforms like yours, my concern and my experience actually to some of this point is our world runs fast, and it's super easy, especially in a high conflict arena, for people to get overwhelmed. And when they're in overwhelm, um, they just want to push it away. They want to get it off of their table because they don't have the capacity anywhere in here. And I think, to your point, that this is an effective piece to help push that away. But again, my concern is that they don't bring it back
Yeah.
and do the work that needs to be done. So again, there's this abdication of learning how to contain, because the personalities in this arena are working from a instinctual survival piece, and because of that, their cognitive processes go offline.
Yeah.
And how do and this is a conversation that we're having, Sol, that isn't necessarily about your platform, but it's the bigger piece about how do we draw them back into their personal process, because men in particular aren't really up for that one.
Yeah.
They're not looking for that therapeutic piece. They want to solve the problem and move on. And my other concern in this particular arena is therapists, by and large, don't understand the high conflict components. Finding somebody that understands it, that doesn't do damage in this arena, is really difficult. They're out there.
Yeah.
But, you're throwing a dart blindly at 100 yards and hoping you hit something. So the process of, here, I've given you this moment of space. What you do with that is really important. What's the hook? How can you, as you're processing this, as you put this out there, make that offer to your clients of, yeah, this is going to help you a ton. Now, what are you going to do with it?
I love this opportunity to think more deeply about that. And I love your advocacy for the healing aspects of co-parenting, because I don't think I could have built this app or been living the life that I'm living now had I not gone through the pain and challenge. And I am fully aligned with the ideas you're talking about, wanting my users to experience life-changing growth. And I think there's always opportunities for us to do better. So, and there are ways that we can help guide them on that journey. So one of the things that came to my mind when you were talking was about, you were saying about how everything moves so fast. And I think that that's one of the challenges that comes up in these types of relationships, is that things are moving too fast. And so one of our core features is giving you the opportunity to slow down your notifications. So you may not be able to set a boundary with your co-parent saying, I only want to receive one message from you a day, because they probably will listen to that boundary and then try to break past it. we allow you to set the boundary, because really that's the end of the day what a boundary does, is it allows you to, something that you can enforce. And so you can tell the app, I only want to receive one message a day. And then we'll queue it all up for you. If we were only doing that, it would be a very unsafe feature, because if your co-parent said, "Oh my God, Johnny's in the hospital, we need to," that would be dangerous for you to miss that. So what we do, because we process everything with AI, we can determine whether or not a message is an emergency or a last minute exchange request, anything that you need to know. So you can safely set that boundary, but then also know that you're available for any urgent situations. And I think that that's one way that AI can help in this scenario, is that we can slow things down for people. We can help them to not respond right away and trigger, to give it some consideration. I've never wanted to, with best interest, be all that heavy-handed though in my approach. I have a coach in my own situation, and um, uh, they're very helpful. And I think that my users would benefit by having a coach. In fact, I'm sure many of them do. And having that relationship can help remind them and encourage them along that healing journey. Best interest is not a replacement for a human interaction. It's not a replacement for a therapist or a coach. We will never serve that, but we can help enhance the healing process, I believe, by reducing the triggering cycles that people get into, the speeding up of the interaction, slow everything down and allow each person to process. The other point I wanted to make is that early on in my journey, I heard this term gray rock, right? I'm sure you've talked a lot about it on this podcast.
Hate the term.
You hate the term. I could not understand how to do that. I didn't know how to get boring. I just didn't. It was so impossible for me not to go to a place where I was wanting to defend myself, right? And it was getting me in so much trouble. Best interest allows co-parents to reduce their triggered responses, because you're just not receiving. So just to give you an example, Brooke, you and I are co-parenting, and let's say that I'm the more toxic one, and I shoot you off a message, stressed out. Brooke, because you're always late, this is a reminder. I want you to show up at the kids' game at 9 a.m. Okay, well, then there's so much hook there for you to grab,
Mm-hmm.
and you might get triggered and, like I said, unconsciously just fire off, what do you mean? I'm always on time, right? And then now you're in a toxic cycle, and that's not so great. But with best interest, what you're going to receive is, Soul would like you to pick up the kids at 9, right? Everything else is stripped out. And that allows you to respond back in a new way, a more gray rock way, right? I know you don't like that term, but you become more boring. You just say, okay, there's no response. There's nothing for me to like feed on. And so the dynamic necessarily changes.
Yeah. I did a podcast on gray rocking a while back, and my notion in learning how to do the high conflict piece has to do with disengagement. And some people will conflate the notion of gray rocking with disengagement. They're really two different pieces, because the disengagement requires an evolutionary process that is internal containment. And what we were talking about before is without that stimulus, there's not the ability to actually begin to work with that piece. And the disengagement process for me is yeah, at some point I got triggered in this piece. Now, how do I learn to structurally, internally change the wiring so that isn't there, because there's going to be other places in my life with my kids, with my new spouse, with my partners, with my job, with all of these other places that these stimulations are going to come in. And if I haven't created that structure, I'm going to fall back into my old patterns. So the notion of gray rocking is I'm just throwing up this piece and I'm going, no. And I'm going to go, yeah, I'll be there. But there's not a processing piece that happens with that. And like I was pointing to a little bit earlier with your platform and this notion of I'm not getting the nuance. I'm just moving on from it. I'm not processing and I'm not growing from it. Then when it comes up in real time, I haven't put the architecture in place to deal with that in my life. And people, frankly, to a large extent, so are lazy. It's
Yeah.
like I got that out of my way. Now I'm going to move on. And they haven't slowed their own processes down to do the work to not do this again.
I imagine, I don't have the data to back this up, but I would imagine that 99% of our users right now are coming in through the funnel of, oh my God, the house is on fire. I'm struggling so hard right now and I need help. And what we're offering is we're offering the help that they need to put out some of those fires and then heal from that. By putting out those fires, then you're able to say, oh my God, that was terrible. It's still terrible. I'm still having these real time interactions that I'm struggling with. But it's not like you're white knuckling the whole experience. And you are able to stay more present with your kids, which is really important to me.
No, I absolutely agree, and I'm not trying to diminish in any way, shape, or form what you're doing. I think it's incredibly valuable. But in the conversation, I'm really wanting to advocate for the listeners and for the people that are going to listen to this, that are your followers as well, is that there's work to be done here.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And it's not just getting out of this conflict. The ground here will likely never be more fertile for people to actually do generational healing if they can step into this portal.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me wonder what the future holds, right? I can envision software coming up in the future that manages the communication for you, right? That you don't even need to speak with your co-parent because the AI is going to talk with them. I don't
AI
know if
talking
that
with
would
one
be,
another, right?
yeah, I would be afraid of that. I
Mhm.
think that it's important to have a human in the middle. I don't think that best interest will ever operate in a capacity where it's talking for you. I think it should give advice, but you're the one who gets to make the decision. And I think that we will start to see more of that happening where AI is being seen as almost a crutch of communication. And then that's the true avoidance.
I mean, I think of my daily interactions with my clients, and as much as there is a lot of commonality, there's nuance, and the nuance is in the processing of not even the communication, but the non-communication of the boundary setting and of setting that in place and then just holding that and then having a strategy to come back around and do what is child centric in the process, the best interest, if you will.
Yeah. It's so hard. Yeah. Learning how to set boundaries is one of the most challenging things. I still struggle with it.
So I want to take one more swing at the plate here with you. Do you see a component in what best interest offers that can help or does help people um, set boundaries and navigate some of this in a more bounded way?
Well, I'm not a coach and I'm not a therapist. Um, so I may not be qualified to answer that specifically.
I'll give it a shot.
Yeah. So I think that the best boundaries that we can set are the ones that we can enforce. And I think that when you're dealing with someone that is some type of cluster B, you're dealing with someone that is perhaps pathologically unable to respect your boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
So going through the process of learning that in real time is helpful, and you can learn how to cope in that situation. But by employing something like best interest, you're starting to learn that you are empowered to make the boundaries yourself. And yeah, you're using AI, you're using a tool to set those
Mm-hmm.
boundaries. But I think it's an interesting mental shift for someone that is codependent to see a feature like setting an hourly or a daily notification window. It almost takes them through a process internally, I would imagine, of wait, I can do that? Is that okay? Is that safe? Like, I can actually just get my peace back. Won't they be mad? Well, maybe they don't know. I think it could bring them through. And I think hearing your feedback is helping me think through this on how we educate users around these boundaries and the meaning behind them. Um, so you've given me a lot to think about. But I think we can help people set boundaries and touch them in a way that feels safe and accessible.
I think that that's true. And what I really like about our conversation, Soul, and the ones that we had prior to this podcast is you think this stuff through. You're a thoughtful man. You consider and you process in real time what it is that we're talking about. I really appreciate that.
And thank you, Brooke. It's a value of mine.
So we've been at this for about an hour now, just short of. And I want to tie this off. I want to offer people in to ask any questions if they happen to be in the room. So Mossy, you can start to open that up if there's anything there. What would you like to, as we wrap this up, tell our listeners, and also give them information of how they can reach out to the Best Interest app to get involved?
Yeah, first of all, I'm always open to feedback. So if you heard anything on this podcast that you you're curious about or you have feedback, just shoot me an email. I'm founder@bestinterest.app. And if you're interested in trying out the Best Interest app, we have a free version, we have a free trial of the premium version, and you can find us on the Android Play Store or or the App Store for iPhone. And yeah, give it a try, see if it helps your situation, and I would love to hear your feedback.
So we'll open this up so we can just wait, see if anybody's in here that wants to step in and ask any questions. We'll give them 4 or 5 minutes to engage. And if they don't, we'll go about our days. But, if you're listening, if you're out there, this is an opportunity to engage with Soul and ask questions about this process. This is always interesting because when I get done here, I know that there are people that are in the background. I know that there are listeners there or have been, and there seems to be a shyness about stepping in and asking the questions.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
It's interesting. Maybe we could get some AI generated questions
Yeah,
in.
right. AI listeners. Yeah, that's fun. That'll be a fun new thing. It's really incredible how fast things are moving with AI. I know you had mentioned that you have been using it and playing around with it, and it made me think about a source of information like your podcast. You've done what, 300 some odd episodes. There's so much data there. There's so many resources that potentially with AI, you could help your listeners tap into, right? Because it's more accessible. I don't have to listen to all 300 podcasts. I can say, gosh, what was the episode or two where Brooke talked about Grey Rock? I want to learn more about that. And I could see that being a really useful resource.
Yeah, there's just a couple of people in here still listening,
Okay.
but there's no questions here yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I've taken all of my podcasts or many of my podcasts, I've dumped them into my chat for data. But I think one of the things that I want to do, to your point, and it's on the list of being able to have an AI component, so somebody can type in a subject, and it will take them to those particular podcasts and separate them out. One of the things that I think we did that was a mistake. Because we didn't have this resources. We had so much stuff out there that we pulled a bunch of stuff down and we're just starting to reintroduce it. And it came with a cost. And oops,
We're always learning and growing, aren't we?
it's not that we can't recreate it, but there's some lost pieces there. Okay, so it doesn't look like anybody wants to engage with the conversation. But Sol, thanks for coming in and doing this.
Thank you, Brooke.
I'm gonna stop the recording for a minute. Stay here
Okay.
for just a second, and
Will do.
be back.
Yeah.